Sorry about that, everyone. I was doing some updating to my computer and it must have timed out on OBS, and then my mic just did not want to pick up. And now I have to like finagle where I plug in my headset, just like I had to twist it just a little bit, and now it's working. So I am a little worried that if I move, it's gonna like twist back and all of a sudden you won't be able to hear me. So some technical difficulties this morning, but we should be all good to go now. So hi. My name is, sorry, I feel like we have to like start all over because that just frazzled my brain and like my stress levels went like super high for that quick, minute or two there. Anyways, welcome. Hi, my name is Megan. I'm a teacher and student success specialist here at Treehouse. I hang out in the UX design tech degree and in the Python tech degree. And of course, sirens are going by right at this moment. Hopefully y'all can't hear it. But we've been working on this home automation app, which as a quick review, and I'm not gonna do an extended review every time we do the home automation app stream, just because eventually it's going to be like most of the time explaining what we did in the past streams. And I wanna make sure that we, actually get to do stuff. So I'll do a quick overview, but we have been working on this app for a couple live streams now, so if you haven't yet checked out the previous home automation app live streams, do so. But that doesn't mean you can't, hang out with us right now. If you haven't watched them, you can always, do that afterwards. So feel free to hang out with us as we actually hop into coding today. So our home automation app is essentially going to be a display, something about that big, that's going to show the daily weather along with the next couple days as far as, the weather and the temperature for those next couple days. It's going to have a grocery list, it's going to have a to-do list, and it's going to have a couple Google Calendar events. That will be up there. So today we're working on the connection to the weather API. So we're going to work on that today. I'm not sure because I don't know how far into it we'll get today. If we don't finish it today, then we'll finish it in 2 weeks from now on my next live stream. And if we do finish it today, awesome. And then we'll do the calendar API next. I'm trying to get the calendars done and then, or get the API things done, and then we'll jump into the other stuff. Just so we kind of tackle using APIs first, and then we can jump into the other two, which will need a database. That'll be database-y stuff. So today we're gonna work on the weather API, and this is the, I had to upgrade my pick this morning. This is the weather API that I'm going to use. I know 2 weeks ago I said a different one. My apologies if you already signed up for a free account, have your API key ready to go. It did not give us for free the availability to do what I need it to do. So instead we're going to use Open Weather, which is openweathermap.org. And if you go to API, and you scroll down, you'll see this 5-day, 3-hour forecast, and that's what we have access to with a free account. And same thing here, you just sign up completely free, don't have to put a credit card down or anything, completely free, and then you'll be able to get an API key. So if you're coding along with me, you will need your own API key because I can't show you mine for reasons we talked about last week, because that one's personal to me and I need to make sure it stays secret from everyone. So that is the API that we're going to use today. So to get started, and you can see I have my hidden keys over there. To get started, if you are using, if you're following along, I'm going to be coding all in this file weather.py, which is in the folder if you download from the GitHub file, which again is github.com/mismeg/home automation app. And that will be the link to it. And I think I've given the link as well, so I can share it. It should be the headset mic. It's coming off of it. Let me try something. Well, I'm getting it there, but it sounds like you're hearing a lot of the room, so give me just a second. Should be what's coming from this. Unplug and replug. Give me just a second, because we're hearing some weird noises. Okay, so I've been testing around, and it seems like it's not picking it up from this mic. Yeah, that does nothing. So I'm just going to take these off, because they're useless right now. What I need to do is I'll need to restart my stream PC, but that means it would take up some time. So if the sound isn't too bad, and y'all let me know, I can totally stop, restart, and we can jump back in. But if it's really bad, let me know, and then I can restart. But if it's like, we can get through it today, then I'm going to keep going, because I don't want to keep dropping with you all. But I see typing. Sounds fine. Okay. All right. We'll keep going then. Hey, I don't have to wear my headset then. My ears are all hot. Okay, so doing our weather API, we're going to start off with installing pip environment. If you haven't used pipenv, it is going to keep track of everything we install to use to make this app, to make this program work. And that way I can put that up on GitHub, and then when you or anybody else downloads it later, you'll have a list of everything that you need for this to work. So it's kind of like its own like version control of what you're using to make the programs work. So I'm going to type in, and also let me know, I was able to change the font size for up here. I'm going to move this up just so it's up a little bit higher. It's not hidden behind my face. But I can also try, zooming things in just for a second. But it's pip, and then install, and then pipenv is pipenv, pipenv. And then it's going to do its stuff. And we just get to hang out here, staring into each other's eyes as it loads, and there it's done. Just a quick one. So now we've installed it, but we need to get into it. It's a virtual environment, which kind of protects your computer. That way you can install all this stuff, but instead of installing it all over your computer, it installs it in this little virtual environment. So then to hop into it, I'm going to do pipenv, and we're going to say shell. So just like a seashell, shell, S-H-E-L-L, pip environment shell, and I'll move this up a little bit because it is kind of hidden behind my face a little bit. So pip env shell. Cool. And so you can see it created a pip file for me. And if I click on that pip file, I can shrink this all back down here. It's kind of empty right now, but it's saying the Python version that I have currently running on my machine is 3.8. And then the packages and dev packages are empty because we haven't installed anything yet. So I'm going to close that, open back up our weather. I'm going to move this all the way up here. So now the first thing we want to install that we're going to use is requests. So requests is essentially you're going to give it a URL, or what we're using our API URL, and it's going to go out into the internet and it's going to say, hey, I have, Megan with her special key and this location would like the weather. And it's going to grab that information for me and bring it back. So I'm going to do pip environment install requests. And it's installing. Ta-da! So now if we look here, in our pip file, we now have requests. And this just means any version of requests is available to be downloaded. We won't get too much into different versions, but we all know if something updates, that can cause other things to crash because they're not used to the updates. So that's where you would specify, like we have 3.8 for Python version, you can specify which exact version you want to use. But for right now, because we're just kind of doing a more simple thing, we're not going to worry about it. And then if you also notice, we have a pip file.log. And so this is another pip file, but this one, everything is hashed, which means it's kind of like password protected kind of thing. Where you don't need a password to access it, but obviously looking at this, you can't read what that says. It's just like, it's just a gibberish version of things. And it makes it a little bit safer when you install later. But again, we'll worry about that later. I just wanted to draw your attention to them so that you're not like, these two files randomly showed up. Should they be there? Yes, they should. They're totally fine. You can leave them there. All right, so now we have our requests. And we're going to do import requests. So we have requests in here. In my keys file, I have, and I like to do this, I like to do the froms before the imports just because they're longer. I don't know. I just like the way that it kind of starts long and then gets smaller. That's just my preference. So I'm going to do from keys, which is I was going to point to it, but y'all can't see my finger when I point to it on the screen, which is in this secret key file that I can't open because it has my secret keys in it. So inside there, I'm going to from keys import, and I have a weather key. I have a state, and I have a city. So inside that file, because you will need to make this file yourself and add it into your modules folder. You should have a weather key, that's your special, whatever it is, your special API key. You should have whatever state you want, which for practice you can do any state, so you can do like California. And then I just have city, which is, we'll just do Los Angeles. I think I spelled that right. So that's what my keys file looks like. It has these 3 variables in there. So if you're coding along with me, you will need to create a keys.py file inside this modules folder and add in those 3 variables. And if you're outside the US, there are different ways to specify your location as well. But for practice right now, you can always just do, like I have here, Los Angeles, New York, any city and state that you're familiar with, and then you can change it later on to be your local local place. Okay, so we have our keys. We have requests. So I'm going to say response equals requests dot get. And then we need to get the information. So I'm going to come over here to our open weather map. And sorry, let me leave that up there for a second for anyone that's typing. Response equals request.get. I know when I follow along in videos, I always have to pause while I'm typing when they're typing because the person in the video always types faster than I do. Okay, so then this is what an API documentation can look like. They all don't look the same, but they usually look pretty similar. So I'm going to scroll down, and here it says API call. So this is the URL I want to use when making my call. So this one has city name in the key. This one has city name and state in the key. And then this has city name, state, country code, and your API key. So this would be one if you're doing something most likely outside the US, you probably want to use that one. I'm going to use this second one because I have a city and state, and then I have my API key. So I'm just going to copy it, and it will need to be in quotes as a string. And I'm going to make it an F string. If you haven't seen F string, it's the same as doing string dot format, where you put in your variables. Instead, I don't have to put them at the end. I can put the F at the beginning, and then I go city, state, and then I need to change this to weather underscore key. I'm going to save. Okay, so that is our, oops. And then one thing that they don't put on their API key, and it catches me every time, is you have to have HTTP://. You have to have that at the beginning for it to work. And they don't have it on the web page. So if you are like me and you copy it over and you go to run it and you're like, why isn't it working? It's because you're missing this HTTP://. That's a fun one to say 5 times fast. So that is the full API call. So it's going to send a request to get information from openweathermap.org and it's going to say, I want this city, this state, and here's my API key so that you know it's me. So that's our whole request. So now our response, if we print out just response, we're probably going to get something that's not entirely helpful. So I'm going to show you all what that looks like in the terminal down here. I'm going to bring this up again. Actually, let me do that for a second. I'll take another drink break just in case someone is typing and following along. Because I get like excited and I do things kind of fast. So I want to make sure if you are following along that I take some breaks so that hopefully you can catch up with your typing. Alrighty, so we're going to check out our response that we're getting back from the API. And I did bring this up enough. So this is going to be pick env. And actually first I need to change the directory because right now I'm in the main home automation app folder. And I need to be inside modules because I want to run the weather.py file. So I'm not inside the right folder. So the first thing I'm going to do is cd change directory space modules. So again, cd for change directory, and then space modules. Okay, so now you can see at the, my mouse is stuck, there we go. At the end over here, it just said Home Automation App. Now it says Home Automation App /modules. So I know I'm in the correct folder now. That is also a thing where if you were about to type in what I was about to type in, it would give you an error and tell you can't find the file because you're in the wrong directory. And that's always a good thing to check too, because there's lots of little things that can go wrong with programming, but once you get into it, once you start playing around with it, you start to remember those things where you're like, oh, am I in the right directory? Oh, did I remember to do this? And it gets easier every time you do it. So why practicing and doing the 100 days of code that is going on that you can do with us is always a great thing to do. So now we're going to try and run the file. So we're going to run pip env run python and then weather.py, the name of our file. So again, it's pip env run python weather.py. And check your spelling, because it could be, a spelling error can cause it to be like, whoop, I don't know what you're trying to do. And, give you that error message in the console that we all love to get. So let's give it a run. So you can see I got this response object. 200 is the status code. So 200 means good. I think we all know 404 means bad. 404 means file not found. Usually in the 400s and 500s are kind of like the bad ones. Things in the 200s are usually good signs, good things. So that means we got something back, but where's my weather data, right? I can't do much with just the word response and the number 200. So one thing you're going to need to do, and I'm going to move this down. I'm going to make it, there we go. That way it's still above my little camera screen so that you can see it. So one thing that comes with your response object is turning it into JSON, which is a popular way to receive and read and parse API information. So at the end of our response here in our print statement, I'm going to go dot, and you can already see it's popping up JSON, and it is a method, it is a function, so make sure you add those parentheses so it actually runs. I'm going to hit save, and then we're going to do the exact same thing down here in the console. We're going to run it again. This is how I like to work with APIs too. I know some people, the more familiar with it you'll know like right away to do response.json so that you can see the information. But I like to go at piece by piece, so that's kind of what I'm modeling today. So I just hit the up arrow on my keyboard, so that way I didn't have to type that whole thing in again. But same thing, pip environment run python weather.py. Woo, right? We get a ton of information. So now we got our information. So step one, complete. We have our info that we need. And now you're probably like, that's a lot, because it is a lot of info. It is every 3 hours for 5 days. So it's a lot of information. So this is where hopefully, which this one does, hopefully the API has an example of the information, the data that you're going to receive back, because then it makes it a lot easier to figure out what you need to do. Because looking at all of that can be really scary, especially for the first time you do an API key. You're like, whoa, that's a lot of information. So in this API, and in most, they give you, if I scroll down here, an example response. So now we can see what a response looks like. So scrolling down, it looks like we have like a date time here. So this is going to tell me the day and time of that matches this information. Because remember, it's every 3 hours for 5 days. So starting on, let's say, tomorrow, it would have information for 3 a.m., 6 a.m., 9 a.m., like vice versa. It's going 3 hours throughout the entire day. So that's going to tell me that this is, it's a random, to me, it looks like a random number. I would have to convert it, but it could be like that's, what's today? The 11th. So that could be like 5/12/2020 at 3 p.m. So essentially that's our date time. So we'll have to do some conversions. So we know we're going to have to do that. Then it looks like we get temp, and you can see this temp, it says it's 284 degrees. I think we can all guess that that's probably not in Fahrenheit. So it'd be really hot. I think that's over boiling. I think we would all be dying. So we're going to have to do some temperature conversion, or we can also see if we can do something with our API call to change the temperature for us so that we don't have to do that math. Just makes it easier on our side, makes our code smaller. So we'll have to see that. But we get our temp, what it feels like, the min and the max, humidity, we get the weather. So that tells us like it's clouds, overcast clouds, gives us some wind speed, and then it gives you, your city information. So that ... means that's repeated for every 3 hours, and then you get information based on your city. So things like sunrise, sunset, things like that. So the information we're going to need is going to be the temperature and the wind speed and our just the main word here for weather, so that we can pair it with an image. So clouds, we pair it with a little graphic of clouds. If it said sunny, we pair it with a sun when we're showing it off. So the first thing that I want to know is, how do I get into where this information is? So it looks like it's in a dictionary. So we have our key value pairs, and the one that I want is list. So that's going to be the first thing that I'm going to do over here. So I have our response.json. Oops, make sure I get that going. So I'm going to do, and to access something in a dictionary, you're going to need your bracket notation. And I'm going to type in list, because that's what we want. Now, this response.json is the entire dictionary that you can see takes up a ton of space in my terminal over here. So I need to call list along with it. Hard to see the text. Yes, I totally can. Let me zoom in on this side. Wow. My mouse keeps getting hot. Okay. So again, our temp, which is super hot for Fahrenheit. We have clouds, and we have wind speed. So we have a list, and actually let me come back here. So we have a list, and then it looks like inside of this list, we will have a single, they will each 3 hour, every 3 hours, it's going to have its own dictionary item in this list. So it's going to have a bunch of them. So first I'm going to run list. So same thing in our console. It's still gonna look like a bunch of information. So same thing, I just push up on my keyboard, pip environment, run Python weather.py. Okay, so now I'm gonna scroll up so we can see. Oh, did it not grab my list? It didn't grab my list. So let's see what I did wrong. We have a dictionary, and list. So I'm trying to grab what starts here. It's not wanting to grab. Let me take a look at my stuff just to make sure I'm not doing it wrong. That was working for me. Let me try. It shouldn't be an issue with single versus double quotes, but I'm going to do it just in case. You're probably like, wow, that's lots of scrolling, that's lots of info. It is. And it's hard to see, but you can see I still have the intro information here, which I'll show you on the other page. So I zoom in, I still have all of this coming in, which is stuff I don't want. I want to get into this item here. So I'm going to try running it again. Scroll down here to the bottom. I'm actually going to clear this out just so it looks a lot less busy. I'm going to push up on my keyboard. and hit run. Okay. Scroll up. There we go. Now we got what we wanted. So you can see, it's kind of, I know it's hard to see, but we have starting from our list. So if I come back over here, I have starting from here now. So I have this item, and I've removed now those things, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it is a lot. So now we know we have a list, and we have a dictionary inside that list. So we have a list. So to access the first thing inside of a dictionary, we want to do the notation for that. So I'm going to add that on to the end, and we're just going to keep adding. So now we need our first one, which remember in Python and in all programming, you start with 0 instead of 1. So we want 0. And it's going to clear up, hopefully, what everything looks like here in the terminal so that it doesn't look so crazy. Do clear again, and running the file again. Much easier, right? Look at that. So much easier to read. So this is how I like to go through it. I like to go through and get one item, because looking at all the items together is super busy, and it's really hard to know correctly where one ends and another begins. Ooh, I can zoom in a little bit here. Okay. A little bit better. Oh, it does weird things with my console, though. That's okay. If it makes it easier to read, then that's fine. Okay, so now we have one item. Well, we know we're going to need to get the temperature and weather, which we're going to need to get clouds, and we're going to need to get wind way over here. So again, we have a dictionary again, and the next thing we need to get is this pair right here, which goes all the way, oh wow, goes all the way over there. It's a long one. So this is main. So now we need to access just main. So just like we did before, we had a dictionary. Now we're in a list in the first one. Now we're back into another dictionary. So I need to use my dictionary notation because I want to access main. So again, on this one, because this might be a little bit easier to see, we've now gotten our first item in our list, and that first item is a dictionary. So we have to use dictionary notation because we want to get main, which will give us all of this information. So we're drilling down, down, and down. And working with APIs, this is kind of typically how they work. It's usually a lot of lists and dictionaries, and then you have to kind of drill down to the piece of information that you want. So this is good practice to on accessing two different data types that are kind of inside of each other. So now we need to get main, which is what I added here. Make sure I save it. I'm gonna run it again. And now you can see we just have the information inside of main that we had up here. And we need to keep drilling down, and we need to get to the temp. So that was a dictionary. This is another dictionary. So now I need to do, and I'll stick with using my doubles. So now we need to get temp. So this should give us 283.78. So let's run it. 283.78. So we know this is what's going to take, what it's going to take to get to one temperature. So that's just one. That's just the first one. And if you're already thinking, well, how would I do this with all of them? If you're having some flashing lights, some ideas popping up about looping, then you're on the right track. We will be doing a loop. I like to first figure out exactly what the information is that I need to grab, and then I will spend time doing in the loop. So I want to make sure I'm grabbing the right information first before I spend time creating a loop and putting information and saving it in some form. So we know we got the temp, so that's good. Now let's work on getting the next thing over here, which is weather, main, and clouds. So let me show you on this side, just in case it's a little bit easier. So we drilled into here, and we drilled into here, and we got the temp. So now we're going to kind of back up a little bit, and we're going to get the weather so that we can get main here, which will tell us, you know, clouds or whatever, which it should be doing my location right now. It should say some form of cloudy, because that's what it is. Maybe rain, because it's supposed to rain today, so we will see. So I'm just going to copy our print statement. I'm going to paste it below. So we know we don't need temp because that's in the wrong area. And so is main because that takes me into that area. So we're going to back it up. So we're back to this whole section again. And so instead of main, we need to ask for weather, which is this section right here. So let's do that. So now we're going to get just the weather. Make sure you save. Am I getting a little close to my box? Not quite yet. Okay. I'm going to run it again. And now you can see we still get our temperature because that's still being printed out up here. And then underneath, we're drilling down into our weather. So now you can see with the brackets on the outside that now we have a list, which, like I said before, it's always fun. You can see we had dictionary, list, dictionary, and now we have a list again. So we're gonna have to use list notation. Drilling into APIs can be challenging, but once you do it, I think it's kind of fun to drill around into it. And it's also really good practice for, like I said before, for different data types that are kind of nested within each other. So I know it's a list, and there's no comma in here. It's just this one dictionary item in the list. So it will always be 0. So let's save that. And I'm gonna run clear. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna bring this up a little bit because I kind of want to keep the original grab so that we can reference it. And I'm going to run the program again. See if we can still see. So now I have that dictionary that was inside. So I have ID, main, description, and icon. So right now, overcast clouds or just clouds, which is totally what's going on outside. So now I need to access main, which is part of this dictionary. So I have to do dictionary notation. Main. Save. And that should return clouds. So I'm going to cover this up. So list 0, weather 0, main. Bring this up a little bit. And we have our clouds. So now we have 2 pieces of the information that we need. We have our temperature and the current weather outside, which is clouds. So the last piece of information that I need is the wind speed. So if I, oops, too far. If I scroll back up here, we can see that we have wind and then we have speed, which kind of loops over to this side. We have speed in degrees. So I'm going to, like I did before, copy this, paste it, and we have our list, our weather, and our main. And we know weather takes us to clouds, which is what we don't want. So we're going to back all the way up to here. And we're going to need to look for wind. And now I am going to clear the console just because it's getting a little bit long. Run clear. And then I'm going to call that. So winds seems like it's going to be a little bit shorter. So we have our temp, we have our clouds. Let me do this. Temp. And this gets us our clouds. And this is going to give us our wind. Okay, so now we have another dictionary because we have our key value pairs, and we just want the speed. That's what we're looking for. So just like we did with the other dictionary items, we need to call it by its key so that we get the value. So we're going to call speed. So now we should have our temp, our clouds, and then our speed. When I save this and print it out. Ta-da! So now we have the information we need for one day, or one set, or one part of one day. So it's a little bit of work. I'm watching our time too, and it took us a good part of the day. That the is responding, yes. Yeah, this is all assuming that you're receiving information back, because obviously if I were to ask for the API's information and it sent me back an error, none of this would work because it sent me an error, it didn't send me information. So yes, that is assuming that it sends you with that it's all good. And that the data scheming of the API doesn't change. Yes, that is also possible. So what they're saying, is that on their website that this organization of the information doesn't change. Because if it does change, it will mess up our app and we'll have to do this again. So yes, if the way they're organizing the information changes, it will definitely make us have to change our code. Usually at least with the APIs I've worked with, they don't change the way the data is organized as much. They usually may kind of like add on sections if there's like new features or things that they put on, so that it doesn't mess up the way that you're using API calls. And if it is going to, like hopefully most other things that you use in the programming world, they will inform you before the changes take place so that you can make changes, get updates ready to go, so that it doesn't crash what you're working on. But that's in a perfect world. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes there are packages and different things, APIs out there where people just change it when they feel like it, and then you don't know until you go in and your app's broken. So it is once you rely on things outside of your own programming code, it's that trust, right? You got to trust that that things are going to work and that you're going to receive information, when things are going to change. But it's always good to keep an eye on things and to check. That's why it's always good when you work on projects to go back and revisit them every once in a while, because updates happen all the time and it could break your project. So it's always good practice to go back. So when we started, I have someone asking about how to check if the API is giving you information, if it's not sending you an error. Oops, I'm just gonna come in here. I'm gonna break this up in here. So to answer this question, I'm gonna go print response. So this is way back to the beginning, and then I'm gonna, just for now, I'm gonna comment those out. So that way we don't see extra information. So I'm gonna run that again. Okay, so you see we get this response object and it tells me 200, which means that we're good. But we can also do response.status code, and let me save that and print. And you can see it also gives me 200, which means we're good to go. You're right, if it sends an error, I'm not going to get the information that I'm looking for here. But I'm going to worry about doing the error functionality a little bit later. I wanted to get kind of more of this stuff done before we jump into error codes and things like that. Wow, this keeps getting stuck. So there we go. And where does the API get the weather data? That is a good question. I bet it has it on openweatherdata.com. I can't remember. I did look into it myself before, and I don't remember exactly where it comes from. But I know it says it on their website. So I would say grab open. That just gives it for local. Let's see if I can find it. Sample data, there's some examples. it says on here somewhere, and I don't remember exactly where it says. It might be matched up with weather.com, and there's also a like major weather API that's a lot more complicated than this one that they could be pulling their information from as well. But I can't remember off the top of my head, I'm sorry. But cool. Okay. So that's how we check and make sure that the information we're getting is coming in, that there's no errors. And that's what we'll use later on when we're saying, you know, if it sends us an error, do this. And if it doesn't send us an error, then get the data that we need. But we're just going to look at drilling down into this data. So let me uncomment this, save that out. So now we have our temperature, clouds, and wind, which is what we're going to need. And we're running a little bit low on time, so I don't want to jump too much into continuing on, because I don't want to get like cut off in the middle of something. So as of right now, we know how to access one item. Of course, we can come in here and then we can do one. I can save that out. I can run our file. And then I get some different information because it's the next item in our list. And so we're going to have to loop through the information here in order to get the information that we want. So how that can look is, I'm going to do for, I'm just going to say data point in, and we're going to say response.json list. So we're going to kind of bring out just this section because we're going to have to, we're going to have to loop through all of the different items in our list. So I'm going to show us what this loop looks like, and then we'll work on making this all work together and be a little bit prettier next time, which actually helps me out because I've done a lot of the weather API stuff. It's all done. So my prep work for 2 weeks from now will be a lot easier. So I'm just going to then actually I'll copy it just so it's still there and paste it in here. Make sure it's still tabbed because it's all about tabs and placements. And then instead of this information here, because we already have this, it's right here, so that can go. It keeps highlighting all of them, so I keep thinking in my head that it's deleting all of them at the same time. Oops, grabbed it in the wrong spot, Okay, so now I'm going to change this to my individual data point. Data point. Instead of one, it's going to be data point. So this one is going to be data point. Okay. Let me clear our console. Clear. And let's run it again. Okay. So now we have a long list of stuff because it's printed on each line. So if I scroll up, there we go. So we see where we started. We have our temp, our clouds, our wind speed, and then the next data points, temp, clouds, wind speeds, then the next one, temp, now it's rain, wind speeds, temp, rain, wind speed, and it goes all the way for every 3 hours for the next 5 days, which is how this is working. Next steps that we're going to do is, one, we have to figure out, use the daytime information that the API gives us to make sure we're only getting one piece of information for each day. And I'm going to use the information at 3 p.m. Because that's typically where the weather, as far as like the temperature peaks, is about 3 p.m. It's about middle of the day. Noon sometimes isn't quite the warmest part of the day, so I'm going with 3 p.m. So essentially, we're going to have to look through the information and say, if the information is on this day at 3 p.m., then grab the information I need, and then go, okay, now I need the next day at 3 p.m., and then the day after that, and the day after that. So that's what we're going to be working on next. At first, I always like to just make sure I'm grabbing the information that I want. And then I like to do the finagling of the specifics afterwards. So that's what we're going to work on in 2 weeks. Before we do that, there's one small thing that we can update so that we don't have temperatures at 291 degrees. Because I believe it comes in, if I scroll underneath our example, it tells me the information about each one. So the default is in Kelvin. So it's 281 degrees Kelvin. And obviously we're in the US, so we use Fahrenheit. And so I want to use Fahrenheit. So I'm going to add a little bit to our API so that we have that information in there. So in between state and our API key, I'm going to click in here, and I have it written on this computer, so let me just make sure I type it in. So we're going to need an and units equals imperial. And then it should say and app ID. So and units equals imperial. And that's going to give us Fahrenheit, so we can run when we clear, and then hit run. Oops, I didn't save. Save first. Now run. And it's going to spit it out. And I'll scroll up so you can see. Okay, so right now, ooh, it's cold outside right now. So right now for me, it's 49 degrees outside, it's cloudy, and the wind is about 5 miles per hour because it also converts the wind speed into the one you want. So you can play around with that as well. Like I said in here, it says the default is Kelvin. You can put in that you want metric instead of imperial. You'll get information in Celsius. And I just changed it to imperial, which means now everything's in Fahrenheit and miles instead of kilometers. So you can see my weather's, we're about in the 50s today. Kind of cool, we're getting some rain. And that's what it looks like for my neck of the woods. So at the other time. So again, next week we're gonna work on getting the information for just 3 p.m. for the next couple days for today, and then the next couple days. We're going to make sure that we save that information in a place that can be accessed in other parts of our app. And I think that's kind of it. So we're going to be working with date time stuff in 2 weeks because that's how we're going to convert that number into something that's a little more recognizable for all of us. We're going to be working with some if statements, some conditionals, some if-else statements. And I'm going to break this up into a class, actually. So a little OOP in 2 weeks. But I hope you all enjoyed drilling down into an API and getting the information we need. Sorry, I'm going to cough real quick. It is kind of tedious, but I also think it's good to have an example so that you, when you see an API or you work with an API for the first time and you get that big pile of data like we did when we started off, you don't freak out and you can figure out how to, piecemeal go down and drill down into the pieces that you want. It's great practice. It's a lot of fun. There are tons of APIs out there that you can work with. There's ones that are, give you real information like we did here with weather information. And there's ones where you can get fake information too. Like if you want a list of fake users for your app, you can get, randomly generated names and emails and all that stuff. So there's a lot of fun APIs out there. Using them is going to be the same process. You're going to want your requests package. Then you're going to want to get your API URL, probably with a key that you're going to need, any other specific information that you want to share, and then request.get that information, and then start playing around with your response that you get back. So I hope you all have fun. I know sometimes when it gets into code, it kind of gets lots of typing and lines and things like that. So it's not as glamorous as maybe being in Adobe XD and working with, you know, colors and fonts and things that are a little more visual. But I hope you all enjoyed it. We're going to keep working on the weather API 2 weeks from now. I believe that is the day after Memorial Day, because Treehouse offices are closed on Memorial Day. It's Memorial Day this month. Yes, I believe that's right. So if you liked hanging out and you liked learning about APIs and working with Python, we do have the Python tech degree. That's where I hang out most of my days. So feel free to hop in there and join. All of our tech degrees have a 7-day free trial that you can, you know, test out, see if you like it, see if it works for you. So jump on in and come hang out with us. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will see you all in 2 weeks. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, stay healthy. Bye, Treehousers.